Fantastic. We've got everybody here with the exception of Keith. All right, Mayor and Council, thank you for joining us for the October 26th Council briefing. We're starting this at 5:30 tonight. Our goal is to wrap up by 6:50 so that the city can commence with the recording of the Planning Commission meeting starting at 7 p.m. We do have 4 items to go over with you tonight. The first one that we have, which was one of the priorities identified by City Council, was the creation of a legislative policies manual. This is something that I was familiar with from my previous place of employment and came in very handy, not just for the elected officials, but also for the staff to be able to point elected officials to the appropriate information within that document. We did send you a draft of the document to take a look at in advance of tonight's briefing. And Lori Scott, our city clerk, was instrumental in putting this document together. What I'd like to do is have Lori just talk for a minute or two about some of the other documents that she looked at in order to put this together. We'll then open up the floor for any comments or discussion from council. One of the things to keep in mind is that the Legislative Policies Manual is not considered a fixed document that lasts forever. It can be amended at any given point in time at the direction of council. So we don't need to feel that the document is a 100% document and that it stays in perfect shape to be revised every 2 years, as it says on the cover. If 3 months from now, the new council says there's 2 or 3 items they want to add to the Legislative Policy Manual, we can certainly make up those amendments, bring them back in front of council and add them accordingly. So it's a living, breathing document. With that, Lori, I'll let you speak for a minute or two, a little bit about what you did and how you did it to put it together.
Hi, good evening. Well, I want to go ahead and start off by saying that this was really an interesting search on my side. I mean, I found things that I didn't even know existed. Aside from the horse on the beach, there was tons of information out there. And as a city clerk, I like that old information and that history. I mean, it's just really some really cool stuff. So just to go ahead and start off with, the Legislative Policies Manual was one of 9 City Council initiatives the city manager is accomplishing. I was tasked to review historical resolutions and ordinances to see if any pertain to council actions, rules, policies, and create a Legislative Policies Manual for council to review, modify, and if you choose, approve for use. Included in the Legislative Policies Manual provided to you are excerpts from ordinances and resolutions that may be relevant for City Council along with their legislative authority. The italicized text in the manual are items that I was unsure should be included and are for your consideration only. Not all items or policies in the manual have legislative authority to support them. They may be city policies and procedures. I do want to say that there was no reason to reinvent the wheel, that there were various legislative policies, samples to use as a resource and more in creating this manual. As far as the search procedures go, what we ended up doing was we searched our document management database. We looked at old agendas and minutes, city clerk files, anything we can put our hands on. We tried to just do all kinds of searches with terms and things that we thought would be of use and be important to go in this manual. It's certainly not all inclusive. It has a lot of room to grow and to change and modify, as you choose. But again, it was almost like a labor of love in the sense that it made me search and really look at the history around here. I'm not from Jacksonville Beach. I'm from this side of the ditch, but not here. And I didn't know much about the beach, but this certainly made me learn more about Jacksonville Beach. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
I don't have any questions, just thank you for all that hard work to put that into a format so we can give it a good review. I think obviously we got a new council coming in a few weeks, and it's going to be more important for them to go through it than us in greater detail. But I think you've given them a great starting point, so thank you very much.
Mayor Pro Tem Hoffman.
I just wanted to thank you as well, and I'm really glad that you got to dig into the history behind a lot of these. It's really interesting, and I'm really glad to see everything consolidated into this document, and also glad that it's a kind of a living document that we can, and it probably will be, especially for the first couple years that it's in use, with things that need to be changed or added that we may be doing as practice but don't have documented anywhere. Do we want to get into more detail on our appointments to the city board, since we now have a little bit of a procedure for that? That's the only thing that I felt like might be kind of missing. In my, albeit cursory read of this, I thought that might be something we want to, because we don't really have that documented in any other location.
Sure. We do have a directive, and we do have instructions that we can just transfer over. It just depends on how in depth you'd like to go. Again, it's something that we can kind of bat around, or you guys can bat around and
Yeah.
take a look at it.
It doesn't have to be super detailed, but I think the idea that we do application, interview, appointment process, I don't want to hold us to anything that's not something that we can continue as a matter of routine, but I just think something that shows that that's an area that we have an actively used process.
Good.
That's it.
Counselor Golding.
Thank you, Lori, for putting this together. I think this is really good. And, as one of the newer council members, I think this would be very helpful for new council members in the future. So I think this is really great. I didn't know if we wanted to talk about any of the information that's in this right now, because there was just one thing that I wanted to ask about. It had to do with the city council meeting invocation and the information that we have in there. And I just wanted to maybe put out there that I know that what some cities do is that they open up the opportunity to local faith leaders, so that you can have like somebody of the Jewish persuasion, or someone who's Muslim, or someone different faiths represented that could potentially come to the council meeting and actually do the invocation. And I right now, the way it's written, it sounds like only the council could do it. So I would love for us to consider maybe opening it up if that's something that we'd be interested in doing. And that's really my only other comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy. And where I came from, we did have a policy where at the start of each year, we sent out an invitation to every religious institution in the community and asked them if they wanted to pick a date to provide the invocation, and gave them some guidelines to try and keep it non-denominational. That worked out well. But again, I think going back to the original part of your question, we can dive into details if the council so chooses. The other thing we can do is talk about it from a very broad brush perspective. And then if council would like, we can reschedule this to be brought back with the new council in a few months' time, once the new council's had a chance to take a look at it, and then we can dive into the details and see if there's anything that needs to be added as well. We could do it either way. Councilor Vogelsang.
The only thing I wanted to touch on, Lori, and I saw you have the honoree or whatever it is page about the process, but I didn't know if I know like Charlie started the Wave Maker Award, and then there's other things. I forget what it is when we say the day, on this day, whatever those are called. It's slipping my mind right now. But if you want to include the mayor's ability to do that and what those criteria are, I think that fits within that page. That's just my short review, what I noticed.
Okay.
Proclamation.
Proclamation. Thank you. Good Lord.
Okay.
Thank you. Mayor Latham.
Yeah, Sandy, I just want to mention that we in fact did do that in year 2 and sent out invitations to all the local clergy. And I think we had one clergyman respond, and we tried again a second time, and even he didn't respond. So, I mean, in today's circumstances in the state of the world today, maybe they're going to feel differently and come out there, but we did in fact try it. And I want to thank Phil for graciously covering every single prayer for the last 8 years. I appreciate that very much.
Not a problem.
Counselor Nichols.
Lori, I think you did a great job. I appreciate all the effort. I definitely learned a lot. 4 or 5 about Pablo Beach South and the reference to geographical locations was new to me. I didn't realize that was there was any derogatory terms involved, and I thought that was interesting. But no, I think you did a fantastic job, and I appreciate your effort.
It was a team effort.
Counselor Dumont.
Ditto, great job, Lori, and your team on getting this done. With regard to the proclamations, I would find it helpful if council knew about these before we got the agenda where the whole public gets the agenda, because sometimes I think we might want to have some input on it, or at least like to be able to just a heads up on some of these proclamations. So while it is the mayor's purview to be able to provide them, I think council should be at least informed prior to it being publicly noticed.
I still see hands raised from before. Not sure if the mayor or Counselor Nichols has anything else to add.
The only other thing that I had is just the Wavemaker Awards. If it's going to come from council, I think, I'd like to see that, all the council either approve it or that council members can often also nominate people for the Wavemaker Award.
I think we've got a handful of good topics here that we can start researching. And if council's okay with this, we'll plan on bringing this back to the new council after they get seated, but we will also provide this to all new council members once the elections are held at the beginning of November. And Dr. Dumont, your hand is still raised. You've got one more comment?
Yeah, so Corey brought up a good point with regarding the Wavemaker Awards. When these proclamations come out, they come out from the city and like from city council as a whole, yet it is only the mayor that dictates it. So I wouldn't say just the Wavemakers, but so it's either one or the other. If there's going to be a proclamation on behalf of the city, it's either from only the mayor or it's from the mayor in consultation or an agreement with the council, because it's kind of all our names kind of attached to it. And that's just a thing. And I apologize for that. I cannot get access to my city email on my computer, only on my phone. So I had to log in and I was hanging out in the waiting room. So this is my work Zoom thing, hence the doctor.
Okay, well, thank you all for that valuable input. And Lori, thank you and the clerk's office for everything that you all did putting this together. I think we've got a good document to kick off the new council with in November. And then we'll look at bringing this back in short order to see if there are any final tweaks that can be made based on the input today and input we might receive when the new council gets seated. With that being said, we're going to dive into item number 2, which is the co-sponsorship policy. Council may remember that going back a year or so ago, when we started talking about different sponsorship events, the city really only had 2 that were recognized. And there was a third category that seemed to be falling in the middle that was a little nebulous. So we had either private sponsored events, which is an organization or an individual that comes in and wants to hold an event somewhere in our city or in our downtown area. And then we had city sponsored events. And what we did not have was a definition or a process for co-sponsored events, which is an event that would take place where there is a benefit to both the city and the organization to hold such an event, and a process for getting them into the queue. We did note that for events such as Deck the Chairs or the car show or the art market, those were examples of where there was some type of a partnership between the city and the actual event, but it did not fit into either of those 2 traditional categories that we had. So Director Fatides was tasked with coming up with a third category, which is co-sponsored co-sponsorship policy event. And he's here to talk to you a little bit about that document, which you all should have received in advance of tonight's meeting. Jason, I will give you the floor.
Thank you, Mike, and good evening, Council. So as Mike was saying, this is just a policy that will outline for us how we're going to go about co-sponsoring events such as Deck the Chairs and the Arts Market and the car show. With me tonight, I've got the Special Events Coordinator, Kathy Butler, who did a lot of the legwork on the policy, and we're proposing that apart from the questions we may receive tonight, to add this to the special events policy. So we'll open it up for questions from council. And as I said, I have Kathy here with me.
And I see the first hand up is Mayor Pro Tem Hoffman.
First of all, thank you. I think this is a great start. This is something I've been asking for probably since the beginning of the Art Walk and Deck the Chairs, because I did see a big gap there without having a process for other people to apply for kind of the same benefit that those events were receiving. My broad concern here is that this might sweep up events that we already have that are already paying to use our space, like some of the charity walks and things. My goal with asking for a category like this was for something similar in the vein of free, provides a public benefit, would be something that we would want in our community. I'm thinking farmers market, acoustic music night, things like that, that aren't intended to be fundraisers for a charitable organization. And I think that's true, you know, with Deck the Chair, or primarily a fundraiser. Deck the Chairs isn't, they raise money. Their event on our property is not a fundraiser. The Art Walk, the car show, or the car cruise, whatever it's called, those are events that I think provide a benefit for our citizens and visitors to our community that I wanted to give an avenue for others like that. And, you know, again, particularly a farmer's market that we would want to have in our community for the benefit of our citizens, but that may otherwise not be able to pay the fees. I also really like that you have kind of some graduated options on the benefits of co-sponsorship, where maybe it's not just a waived rental, but maybe you're waiving the banner fees or some of the administration costs, things like that. So I think that's a really good idea. But for me, I would say that this is not intended to supplement nonprofit organization fundraisers. That's my opinion.
Thank you for that input. Councilor Vogelsang.
I agree with Chris. I think you're putting the council in a bad position to not give every nonprofit a free event, because everybody's going to apply, and we have how many? We always talk about how many we have. So you're going to get 100 applications, and now who are we favoring? Who are we not favoring as far as charitable organizations go? I think it puts the council as a decision maker, or if it's you, Jason, making that decision, in a pretty tough spot versus more stringent criteria, like Chris said.
Any other comments from council? Any other councilor thoughts on excluding fundraisers from this type of a policy? Back to Mayor Pro Tem Hoffman.
Can you just go through who serves on the special events committee?
Sure. So the chairman would be myself, and then obviously Kathy Butler from Parks. It would be the police chief or a designee from the police department, the fire marshal, as well as Streets Division of Public Works and Building Maintenance.
Thank you.
Well, if there's no other comments on this item, sounds like Jason, do you and Kathy have the direction that you all need on this topic?
I believe so, Mike. What we'll do is add some language to, more define, the events we're targeting, as Councillors Vogelsang and Hoffman have pointed out. So we'll redo that and submit to you for another reading.
Sounds good. And if we are to incorporate this into the special events ordinance, then that means it'll have to come back for 2 readings to City Council. So obviously there's, I'm sorry, it looks like you have a question, Jason?
Yeah, no, you'd asked me if we adopted the policy by resolution the last time, and we did not, Mike. It was an adoption without a resolution.
Okay, we'll get with the city attorney then on the appropriate means of adoption.
Okay.
We'll make those changes and then we'll bring it back for future council consideration. And Dr. Dumont has her hand raised.
Yes, I would like it to come back to a briefing before it comes back for a vote.
And I see heads nodding from those council members that will still be here at the end of November. So we'll do that. We'll make final changes and then we'll bring it back for one final briefing consideration. Sound good? Okay. With that being said, we're ready to move on to item number 3, which is golf course rate resolution. This is a topic that we actually started talking about just before COVID hit. And as a result, it's been put on the back burner until we've been able to navigate the pandemic accordingly. But with that being said, Bruce has stepped forward and said now's the time for us to reconsider this particular item. We've sent out a table to all the council members in advance of the briefing tonight, so you could see what Bruce was actually proposing that we do. And with that being said, I will turn the floor over to Bruce so he can walk through with you what we're doing, why we're proposing it, and to take any input that you might have. Bruce, take it away.
Thank you, Mike. Good evening, council. So I don't want to, reiterate everything that I talked about on March 2nd, but I did go back on March 2nd and listen to all of us have the discussion that we did, a very detailed discussion as far as what we were planning on doing and proposing to do and why we were doing it. The dynamic pricing model is still taking place. As you can see, the rates are what they are. That we do plan on doing a dynamic pricing model for everyone except our seniors, our beach pass holders, and the juniors. So we do find that our constituents, the people that we really truly want to cater to, the golfers, we've got over 300 of them that are beach pass holders, that we keep a static rate, and the rate increase is only $2, is what we've gone 35 on the weekdays and 39 on the weekdays. But that rate does stay static, which means they're not subject to dynamic pricing like anybody else coming from Orange Park or out of city or out of state. So bottom line, after everything we looked at here, the rates that we've got for our regular customer is well in line, if not extremely below what our competition is. I think we've kind of got a unique opportunity here. We've got a product that Trevor Hughes and his crew have really put together, and on a daily basis we hear it of just how much better we are than a lot of area golf courses. And so I think the concept of us having a great golf course coupled with us having a great value, I think is very important for everyone in this call. So I don't, we're not here to price ourselves out of anything. Like Mike Sifopoulos said on March 2nd, we're really trying to, still be the greatest value that Jack's Beach can possibly offer. And so that's why the rates that we've got here aren't anything drastic, anything increasingly large over what we've been doing, or certainly what our competition offers. So again, the dynamic pricing is going to only affect the people that are not beach pass holders, no seniors, and no juniors. So everything else is going to stay fairly well in line and still well below what we're doing. Is there any questions from our March 2nd meeting? Anything want to come up at this point in time?
Councilor Golding.
Hey, Bruce. Since March 2nd, I have had a woman contact me. She's a senior. She lives in Jack's Beach, has lived in Jack's Beach a long time. And she was asking if there was any possibility that residents who are seniors could get a better discount than what they're currently getting, because she she cited the tennis center discount for residents and parking. We have, a special discount for residents for as far as parking goes. So I told her I would bring it up and please put it out there. Is there anything more that we could do for seniors? She was saying primarily her thinking was like on Monday or Tuesday when maybe the golf course is not as heavily used, and that's just what she asked me. Okay, I'm not a golfer, so I don't know.
Okay. No, I understand.
But at least on her behalf, I wanted to mention that, because she said she loves the golf course, but she's a senior and she said that she can't necessarily afford to pay, what we're charging seniors right now on a regular basis. And
Sure.
so I just wanted to bring it up.
Yeah, no, it's a fair question. Our senior rate for walking is $12.84 after green fee, card fee, or green fee and tax. There's nobody else in the city that can walk up to a counter and say, I'm senior 9 holes walking and get that rate. Not even close. The senior rate of $27.57 that we're proposing to go up to, by the way, in case you're wondering, the 7-cent increase is simply strategically, Mike, I lied to you last week. It's $29.50, not 30. Is just simply to have a rounded number so the seniors don't have to carry 57 cents in their pocket, and we can just give them back 50 cents. So the senior rate that we have is hands down the least expensive in town and available more days than most people. Now, there's one other golf course that offers a senior rate 7 days a week, but it's still $12.50 higher than us. So coupled that with, we offer these seniors on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, these group blocks that we do for them, ladies in particular on Tuesdays with the E-League that we have in our JBLGA that have the greatest deal on the planet. We pre-block these times for them in advance so they don't have to worry about the general public booking ahead of them. So not only is the rate better, but is also the availability for them to play Monday through Thursday is way, way greater than any other golf course. So I'm not sure that there's anything we can do financially to go lower on the price. Or as far as availability goes, I think what we offer right now is hands down the best deal in town for seniors.
Yeah, and I think the key here is that because she said it several times that she's a resident of Jack's Beach. So I didn't know. I know we've got the pass holder thing, but she was saying that she couldn't do the pass holder or whatever. But
the pass holder
because yeah.
Yeah, we have a better senior rate than we have a pass holder rate. We have like the greatest, we care more about them than we do our pass holders as far as rate goes. So, yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know if there's a possibility to like say seniors who are residents get because they're a resident, they get an additional discount. Anyway, that's.
Yeah, no, thank you. I think there's, a lot of room to work with. We've been open for, 2 years now and almost 2 years now, forgive me. And I still think there's a lot of room to grow. There's a lot of changes to be made. When we came on board, the senior rate was always lower than the pass holder rate, which was a little bit odd that we're catering. We have a better rate for them than we do for our own pass holders. So I think there's some work for us to be done in the next 6 months, year or two, to identify that. What if you're a senior and also a local? Should we have a better deal for them, or should we not care as much about the senior who's not a local or constituent?
Next, Mayor Latham.
Mute.
Currently muted, Mayor.
Sorry about that.
It's okay.
What's the age for a senior? 65?
Yes, sir.
And I've been playing a lot of golf in the last couple months, and the course looks great and plays great. But I haven't seen anybody anywhere close to our senior rates. I would respectfully suggest that your constituent kind of look around a little bit at what the other rates are. But I understand she's a resident, but these are great, great rates. And I'm glad you kept them as low as you did.
Thank you.
Councilor Nichols.
Hey, Bruce, appreciate all you're doing out there. I hear more positive things about the golf course than like anything else. I mean, y'all are doing a fantastic job. Want to just ask about the rounds that are getting played now. I know we had a bump in rates a while back, and just wanted to, I mean, my guess is it really hasn't impacted the number of rounds that are out there. You're still having to try to limit that, right?
Yeah, no question about it. Every day. I mean, the last bump in rate was March of 2019. I mean, it's been a
Oh,
year,
wow.
and we were supposed to, hopefully in April go back to this, but with COVID, we've kind of held it at bay, and we just didn't feel like it was prudent at that point during COVID we're trying to manage a golf course, the demand, the economy. And we just didn't feel it was proper during this time for difficulties for everybody to go up in rates. That's why we've kind of waited until now to, okay, look, things are somewhat whatever our new normal is going to be, to introduce it at this point. So no, we have not slowed down at all. I mean, dude, Corey, it's been 250, 200, whatever the daylight allows is what we take. And the difficult part has been managing with the single rider card. If somebody would have told me, back in March or April, whenever it was, hey, we're going to limit one person per cart for the next 7 months, and you're going to make 30% more than what you did before, we have to laugh at them, right?
Yep.
You're killing half of my cart fleet, and you're just logistically it doesn't make sense. So the play's been active. It hasn't slowed down, and I think more than anything else, we probably turn away anywhere from 75 to 125 people a day, I think, because of the demand of the golf course. So Trevor and his crew, like I said, have been remarkable for everything we've done, and our staff inside has done a great job of trying to manage the amount of people we allow to play every day, based on the cart situation that we had up until a couple weeks back.
Absolutely. Well, y'all are doing a great job. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions from council on the proposed rate changes by Bruce?
Nothing on the 125 or 150? Okay.
I'll be honest, I can't access my email, so I'm not sure.
Okay, so a lot of the discussion at the March 2nd meeting, Dr. Dumont, was about the $200, the $75 increase from 125 to 200. And the majority of it was because of that. So we went back down to 150. And my concern was kind of cannibalizing our rates because it's that much less expensive to join the Beach Pass and get the less expensive rate, then everybody would do it, whether you're a resident or non-resident. So we went up to the 250 from the 175 for the non-resident and 150 from the 125 for the resident. So we're hoping that this somewhat limits the amount of non-residents who join because of the 250 price tag and how many times do they have to play. So before you had to play 17 times a year in order to get your money back. As a Jacks Beach resident. So that wasn't a whole lot. That's, 1.3 times a month, something close to that. So I went back and listened to that video, like I mentioned earlier. And I think, I'll put it to you this way. I think our focus, needs to be on our golfer constituent. We want to make sure that we're giving them the best value and the best product, right? And I think we spent a little bit of time discussing the person who doesn't play, but once or twice a year, who wants a break on golf because they're a constituent. And in my experience, and I'm there every day, almost, I don't take too many phone calls from someone wanting a discount or wanting to know what the discount is that are non-golfers. So people that are golfers expect some sort of break at their local muni if they're city taxpayers, and we have a great deal for them. And every time I get off the phone with one of these people that said, okay, you're a Jacks Beach resident, Great Beach Energy customer resident, come on down. This is how much it is to join. This is how much money you're going to save. They come down that day. I've yet to field a phone call for someone who's not a golfer or only plays 3 or 4 times a year that expects something. So I want to make sure that we're focusing on the people from a golf side of it that expect something, that want something, that deserve something, and we're able to give that to them.
How many rounds for a senior I guess 2 rounds, 2 questions. How many rounds for a senior versus a regular person who's a resident to make up their annual pass being a resident?
How many rounds for the senior to make I'm sorry.
Yeah,
repeat that?
so actually you said that the senior rate is less than the pass holder rate. So the non-senior, how many rounds do they have to pay to equate how much they pay for an annual pass versus if they were to just do a regular
17.
17 round?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Anybody else?
Counselor Hoffman.
Thank you for going back and listening to the tapes and for moderating that increase. It was just a big jump. It was a lot, and we just, baby steps. Not
I
even
agree.
really baby steps. It's still a pretty big step, but I think that's it feels a lot better to me.
I agree. And I think when you've got 30,000, that's the number that was thrown at me. Is that right, Mike? 30,000 Beaches Energy customers?
Accounts, yeah. 30.
Yes, accounts. So that's a little scary from our end of it when we've got 261 registered to be Beaches Energy pass holders. So when we make that big of a deal, but I think what we've kind of found out is we've leveled off a little bit, right? And we're come to find out that 30,000 people don't want to come out and play golf and be Beaches Energy customers. So I think this time that we've had since then, even if it's 10,000, 5,000, 2,000, we were scared a little bit at that point that if we had the rate that much lower than the dynamic pricing, that everybody would join. So I think during COVID, anyone who's wanted to golf has come out and played golf, as evidenced by our numbers. I mean, we did close to 70,000 last year, and I'm not sure that there's a golf course, certainly not in Northeast Florida, maybe in the state of Florida, that 18-hole facility in Florida where we tend to have rain, hurricanes, that kind of stuff. This isn't San Diego that is 72 and sunny every day. I don't know of many golf courses that have done 70,000 rounds. Manage what we've done with single rider golf carts, and more importantly, have the golf course conditions that Trevor and Hughes and his crew have been able to maintain throughout this time. We don't have the luxury of closing every Monday. We don't have the luxury of closing once a month. So what they're doing out in the golf course throughout the week, throughout the month, without being closed at all, is nothing short of a miracle. I mean, they've done great. We're very fortunate to have him, and to have the conditions we've had with that many rounds speaks volumes to the work they've done.
Seeing no other hands raised, we will prepare an item to bring back to council for formal consideration of these rate changes. And for those of the council members that don't golf, if you want to go out and get a tour of the course, just so you can see what it looks like and understand that we have 50, 60,000 people a year traversing over the grass, the greens, driving carts, and see the condition that they're able to maintain it in, and see the business operation that they're running for the course itself. It's very impressive what Bruce and Trevor and the rest of the team out there have done and continue to do. Corey, you've got one more comment?
Bruce, just one more question. Just how are the trees coming in out there that got planted?
Well, let's bring Trevor into that. Trevor, you there?
He's back in a minute.
Yeah. Yes. The
There he
trees are doing great. This last northeaster beat them up a little bit, but we've been fertilizing them and making sure they get adequate water. And no, it's been a great asset for us for sure.
Awesome. Fantastic.
Okay, Bruce, Trevor, Jason, thank you all for that one. I think we're ready to move on to item 4. Item 4, I'm actually going to turn over to the city attorney since he has had multiple conversations with both our insurance carrier as well as third-party attorneys. And I see he's on the line, but I'll wait for him to go live. Here he comes.
Hey.
Chris, you've got item 4, and I'll let you take it away.
Okay. So this item came to my attention initially when I was originally appointed to the position, but then didn't go much further with it because there was really nothing for me to do on any of these ethics commission complaints other than give Karen a little bit of guidance with respect to a investigator who was working on the complaints and sought to interview Karen. So I met with Karen briefly. We discussed the upcoming interview, and then Karen sat for a confidential interview with the investigator. This was all well before COVID. Then I had nothing to do with this and none of the complaints whatsoever. It was well down on the back burner. Then a council member asked me to look into the status of where these complaints are at. And again, like I said, I wasn't paying any attention to them at the point because they had already been turned over to Commission on Ethics. There was nothing for me to do on them. So I started to look into them in response to the council member's request for me to look into the status. So then having actually looked into it further, I'd started to discover that there was confusion, misunderstanding, perhaps misinformation that existed prior to my appointment. And so I've uncovered some of the situation, confusion, and misunderstandings, and I have definitive answers and information that should clear up the confusion that existed prior to me. So I can't remember, Mike, exactly how we made this a briefing topic, but nevertheless, it's a briefing topic. Here's where we are. The confirmed in writing from our insurer and Summit and PGCS, the two Commission on Ethics complaints filed by Mr. Mcgowan are certainly covered by PGCS, and they are providing for defense counsel for Mr. Vogelsang, and those costs are being paid for and absorbed by the insurer. The complaint that is 19-092, as it's identified as being filed by the city mayor / city council, there is no coverage for that complaint. The insurer is also not going to provide any defense costs. They have not assigned defense counsel for that action, and there will be no coverage for that. So as it currently stands, if that complaint were to go forward based on the insurer's position, the defense representation needs to be picked up or assigned by counsel or Mr. Vogelsang, and all costs associated with that would need to be absorbed and paid for by either the city or Mr. Vogelsang. The position of the insurer is that they issued a position statement letter in September of 2019, which I've come to learn that I believe that Mr. Vogelsang never saw this. They, unfortunately, Summit, I sent it to Mr. Vogelsang at some P.O. box number in Jacksonville. I think it might have been a P.O. box number at City Hall, but it was never delivered to him. But in their coverage letter, they make it pretty clear that there are at least 3 or 4 reasons why they are going to deny coverage and not provide a defense. Some of the points that they make is that this is essentially, coming from their perspective, this is an insured versus an insured complaint, meaning the insured party for our insurance company is the city council, and each of the individual council members acting in their official role as the elected official on that board. The way that PGCS and Summit determine the council complaint against Mr. Vogelsang is essentially that this is a covered party versus a covered party. Their insurance policy isn't set up that way to insure or provide defense in that type of scenario or complaint. And also that it appears, based on their judgment, that based on the allegations or the facts or the details of the complaint, that Mr. Vogelsang did not commit a wrongful act, meaning that what the alleged actions were not in the performance of his duties as an elected official. And that they will only provide coverage when the wrongful acts are committed in the performance of his duties for the public entity. So they had several reasons why they found exclusions of the policy in this circumstance of the complaint filed by counsel against Mr. Vogelsang. So that's where we stand in terms of the insurance coverage. I've also spoken to the attorney that was hired by the insurer to represent Mr. Vogelsang and provide defense counsel services to him in the Mcgowan actions. And he's a very easy to work with attorney, very forthright. Of course, did not disclose any privileged, confidential attorney-client communications that he and Mr. Vogelsang are entitled to. But he shared with me that he's done very little work on these cases for this year. He believes that COVID probably shut down a lot of the investigative process, but also that he didn't really have a handle on his role with respect to serving as defense counsel as it relates to the counsel's complaint. He understood clearly that he's defending Mr. Vogelsang with respect to the Mcgowan actions. But from what I gather, essentially his billing has just been for the most part, just one big handling or file of all of the COE actions, and they happen to be, in his mind, the Mcgowan actions. And the way that PGCS has their file set up, they have it just set up as the Mcgowan actions. So somehow during 2019, it appears that the counsel's complaint somehow got blended into both files, Byron, the attorney's file, and then also PGCS's file. So again, I don't know how to explain the confusion that occurred prior to me, but that appears that confusion seemed to have existed with the insurer as well as the insurance defense counsel that is serving and representing Mr. Vogelsang. But that's the update, and I'd be glad to discuss more and answer more questions.
Chris, do you want to tell them about how the state is handling the 3 complaints as well? I think we had heard that the state has actually bundled all
That's right.
together, which may be the domino effect of why everybody was looking at these as an amalgamation as opposed to 3 individual issues.
Right. Yep. I would say that the actions are consolidated, and it appeared to be a consolidation of the complaint in terms of the last contact that I had, which again was an investigator calling upon Karen's confidential interview many months ago. And if I recall right, in talking to the investigator, it was clear that he was here on all 3. And it was a bundle. It was a bundle and it was a consolidation. Meaning he conducted his interview one time for all actions. And if they weren't consolidated, he would have isolated interviews per complaint. And so, right, seems like they're treating it all as one. They're reviewing it all as one. It's very difficult to get insight into the investigative procedure from the Florida Commission on Ethics. It's kind of a closed door situation, and that you come out with an opinion or an order, but right now I don't know what the status is and I can't find out.
Before we get to Dr. Dumont, I'll just preface it by saying last year, I believe just before Chris came on board, there was some confusion on staff's part. We had heard through the insurance company that there was an issue with regards to the deductibles, that there would be no deductibles for the items that had been filed by Mr. Mcgowan, but that there would be a deductible filed for the one that was filed by the city. We since received clarification at that time where they specifically addressed the issue of deductibles, where they told us the city does not have a deductible anytime that we have a claim of this type. But what we did not receive was clarification that the claim that was filed by the city against Councilor Vogelsang was completely excluded from their consideration. So that's where we're at today. So we wanted to bring this to the council's attention to see what your thoughts are and see if there's anything in particular that you want us to do. Dr. Dumont, you have your hand raised, followed by Councilor Vogelsang.
Thank you. So the state is combining them all into one case. I just want to clarify that the state has 3 different complaints, and they're they're investigating it all as one.
For investigative purposes, they're moving forward as a bundled, consolidated set of complaints.
So how does the lawyer separate those out? Because it's the state complaints. How would the insurance company's lawyer say, well, this goes to subcase A, B versus C, which C just coincidentally is the council complaint?
Right. At this point, he hasn't done that. The assigned insurance defense counsel, he hasn't necessarily had to do that during the investigative process. In terms of how he assigns his billing and his work, I don't think that he's done that because he hasn't been able to share that with me.
I guess I'm just having he might not have done it in the past, but I don't know. And I don't know what Mcgowan's complaints are and how they differ from council complaints, the council complaint. And if there's overlap, how a lawyer would tease out which things go to which complaint. I'm just, there's a lot of muddiness in the lawyer in the case here. I understand where the insurance company is coming from, and I fully understand why they're saying that. It wasn't done as a council member. But on the flip side, it's hard to tease it out, and it's solely hard to tease it out just because the state threw it all together instead of keeping a citizen complaint separate from a council complaint. So I put this back on the state, never mind just how long it's taken them to do absolutely nothing on it. Not absolutely nothing, but nothing for public consumption. It's been a while. It's been has it been 2 years?
The first Mcgowan action is from 2017. The second Mcgowan action is from May of 2019.
And then ours was 2020?
Was May of 2019.
2019. Yeah, I just want to say I'm extremely disappointed in the state in letting this drag on and letting Phil hang on this long without any kind of solution or outcome with something that's really hanging over him professionally. And we just went through that with you. And so I think that's very unfair to Phil. And so I'm very, very disappointed in the state on how long it's taking them to complete this matter.
Councilor Vogelsang.
I can tell everybody that the fire portion, I know there was, the question is whether my interactions with the police officer is the question, whether I pressured him in any way. That's the only thing that went forward. The whole firefighter thing is not going forward. And it's not public record yet, but so the only thing that's even really questioned, and I believe the police officer was interviewed, and I was interviewed on that with regard to whether I pressured or misused my position in any way. So I don't think there's much to the complaint. I think it should be relatively easy to be closed out because I didn't do anything wrong. Half of it's already gone. So I guess it's up to the council. I'm just adamant that I don't spend any of my own money for a defense attorney. So that's really just where I lie with this thing. And I remember it being brought forth before with Denise May. And the question was, well, let's let it go because Phil's not going to be out of pocket anything. And because she had drafted the opinion questions to send to the Commission on Ethics on whether conduct was appropriate or not. And we decided not to do those questions because it wasn't going to cost the city anything. But I guess it's just a weird situation, I would say, because we're so far along. And like you said, this has been hanging around forever and it's annoying to me more than anybody else. So I can tell you, I think it's close, but COVID hit. And then now it's just been sitting there, and who knows when his investigative packet's going to be put out there. But I know that it's only, as regard to the council, the only thing that was even investigated was whether my actions with the police officer were inappropriate, whether I
Bill, can you
misused.
just provide a little bit of clarity for me? The council was on the police. I don't know what the Mcgowan stuff was. Was Mcgowan a police and fire in a festival, or?
McGowan's was all separate stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can give you a brief summary. His complaints are right in front of me. So McGowan's complaint from 2019, and let me just summarize it for you real quick. Let's see. He claims in his statement of facts that in August of 2017, the Duval County Tourist Development Council met with Mr. Vogelsang and his business partner, made a presentation on behalf of their business, North Florida Productions, for the Oktoberfest Music Festival. The claim is that Mr. Vogelsang and his partner state that they have taken payment from the city of Jacksonville Beach contractor. That's the if you guys remember, that was the issue that Mcgowan brings up. He claims that
This is the 2019 complaint.
right. He claims that Mr. Vogelsang received the cash payment from Advanced Disposal. Advanced Disposal is a contractor with Jax Beach. Contract was awarded in December of 2016. And from Mr. Mcgowan's words, he says, while it is not stated the value of that sponsorship, it is stated that the beer sponsorship was $40,000. So Mcgowan's 2019 complaint centers on what appears to be what Mr. Mcgowan's opinion might be, is that there was an improper business relationship with respect to a sponsorship in the October Music Fest.
Okay.
That's Mr. Mcgowan's presentation of the statement of facts to the commission. And then Mr. Mcgowan's summary of presentation of statement of facts in the 2017 complaint.
That one's just, all he did was take the issue before the council and send it to the commission. The Oktoberfest Jax Beach Festival.
Right. Yeah. It's essentially the same exact thing.
Yeah.
Right. It claims that there were, that Mr. Vogelsang used his position to get these sponsorships involved with the Oktoberfest. So the Mcgowan complaints are very different from what the city council's complaint is.
Councilor Nichols?
Chris, I guess my question is, if my recollection is correct, that the reason the city went forward with the one against Phil was to allow him to have an opportunity to clear his name, and that there was not going to be a cost to him. Is that, I mean, I think that was part of the discussion that we had when we, I don't even believe I don't think I was even in favor of bringing it forward. Is this something that we can drop at this point in time? Because it seems like we're not accomplishing, what the intent was, unless Phil wants to continue with this so he can continue to clear his name.
Right. My understanding is that, yes, at the time it was contemplated that if a complaint was filed, that of course Mr. Vogelsang would be entitled to submit a defense on, with respect to a complaint that's filed against him. And also that for some reason it was understood that he would have defense counsel and coverage provided to him to afford him to assert that defense on a filed complaint. But it appears that Summit Risk Services and PGIT never made that assurance, and essentially did the opposite, which was they issued a letter that said, we're not providing coverage. We're not going to provide defense counsel. So essentially, Mr. Vogelsang is going to be confronted with representing or obtaining his own defense counsel, being responsible for his own defense costs if counsel decides to file this complaint. The alternatives were a sample of the complaint that the counsel would have filed. A sample of that could have been sent off to our insurer. And we could have said, theoretically, if we file this, will Mr. Vogelsang have coverage and will he be provided a defense? Sort of as a cursory review, as a theoretical complaint. That apparently wasn't done. The second alternative route the city could have followed was, of course, just seek an advisory opinion letter. When a commission on ethics is asked to issue an advisory opinion letter, the names of the persons that are involved are omitted from the opinion letter. So the Commission on Ethics can issue an opinion letter, which would be binding on the particular elected official, and it would also not bear the names of any of the persons involved in the alleged incident. So that would have been a very good option. However, with the understanding that a complaint can be filed, Mr. Vogelsang will have coverage, he'll have defense covered for him, and he can therefore officially defend himself in a proceeding. I could understand that if that was the understanding, then that certainly looks like a very clear route, but that was there was misunderstanding there. Currently, the council could withdraw the complaint. To give you a little insight, I was involved with an attorney in South Florida who was lying to the court over and over and over, verbally and in submissions to the judge. I filed a complaint against him with the Commission on Ethics because he's lying to the judge. We worked it out. I submitted a request for withdrawal of my complaint. I received a very brief letter from the Commission on Ethics. We've received your notice of withdrawal that you reconciled with the party. The issues are resolved. The complaint is hereby withdrawn and the file is closed. It was done in 2 weeks. That was my experience.
Would that have to go to council? I mean, would that have to go back to a council meeting?
I think that I would request that council vote and give me the approval to submit such a withdrawal request. I would have to get guidance from my majority of my clients to do that,
Sure.
Certainly.
Okay. Phil, did you have any other input?
I mean, my thought is bringing this back up to the council and then being back in the public again, and then it getting withdrawn looks crappy for me. I don't appreciate that at all. I would then people think,
Yeah.
I think then the perception would be that I avoided getting in trouble when I didn't do a dang thing wrong. So, and I already know half the complaint was dismissed already. So, that's just where I would stand on it. If it had to go back to council, if it didn't have to go back to council and we withdrew it, but I just would prefer it not to, just to sit as it is then if it has to go back to council.
Councilor Dumont?
Doesn't have to go back to council just because council voted to submit the complaint. So council then has to say that we want to unsubmit the complaint. There's already been a formal vote for the submission.
Yeah, I'd have to go back and check the minutes of that particular meeting, but I believe you're correct. I believe there was a formal vote by council to authorize the mayor to submit the complaint on behalf of the council. So I think if there was going to be an action to withdraw it, it would basically need to be a council action to do so.
Right, it has to be a formal vote. So our options right now are a formal vote to withdraw the complaint or to allow the complaint to go forward, knowing that there may be a cost to the city or Phil. And those are our only two options, I believe.
That's pretty much it, unless Chris can think of a third.
No, at this point, those are the two options, and tied to the option of allowing the complaint to proceed is defense counsel for Mr. Vogelsang would have to be obtained. I mean, it makes practical sense to just retain his current attorney on the Mcgowan actions, Byron Cornwell. It would make sense to have him continue as defense counsel for Mr. Vogelsang. But in terms of our insurer, as far as they're concerned, they're not responsible for providing a defense attorney to Mr. Vogelsang. So if counsel would like to have the complaint continue forward, we have step B, which is Mr. Vogelsang is entitled to defense representation, and who's going to pay the bill for that defense counsel.
And that, how I understand it, that would not have to, it would have to go back to council because it would be an expense, but I don't know if it would have to be if it would be an expense that would go over a regular administrative expense that would have to be approved by council because it's not budgeted for.
Right. I don't foresee defense counsel's fees for Mr. Vogelsang on the city council complaint exceeding $25,000.
Okay, so I'm sorry. So we wouldn't have to, if we just let it lie, it goes forward, there's no council vote.
Right. I would be shocked if defense counsel had an invoice for legal services on just the city council's COE complaint that exceeded $25,000. It'd be surprising because currently, for all of his work that he's done under all the complaints, in terms of what our insurer has reported to me, he hasn't even he's billed just under $25,000 for everything for the past couple of years. I can't foresee him billing over $25,000 on just handling and isolating his legal fees just for the city council complaint. I'd be shocked if he ended up billing that much.
So this really falls back to Phil, well, I guess to us, but to Phil to decide which is the worst of the two evils. To have it go back to council for us to withdraw it, which makes it look like you're getting out of doing something that you possibly could have done that wasn't right, or you taking on the cost of defense.
He already said to move forward.
We've already said to do that, but we can bring it in, but that would mean that Phil has to take on the cost of a defense lawyer. Or if it goes back to council and we withdraw it.
The city will pick it up if it.
Right.
The city should pick it up.
Now, I thought that's what the whole thing with this is that the city's not picking it up because you did not do these actions in the act of a city council member. You did it as a private citizen who was a lawyer speaking with the police.
Well, the insurance isn't picking it up, but the city should be picking it up, not me. That's just why the insurance didn't pick it up, but I'm certainly not.
The conflict exists because he is a council member, not because he's an attorney.
So we wouldn't be voting on whether the city is going to cover these costs because it'd be under 25,000. If we think would be under 25,000.
Right. My opinion is that the fees for Byron Cornwell to represent Mr. Vogelsang on the city council's complaint, I can't fathom him spending more than $25,000 to defend Mr. Vogelsang with respect to that complaint. Because again, remember, the only billing that we are going to see would be with respect to that, because the two Mcgowan actions, those bills are being submitted to the insurer. So I would ask again, I have no authority to do this, but if Byron were to be assigned as defense counsel to represent Mr. Vogelsang's interest in defense on the city council action, I'd be shocked if Byron ended up billing anywhere close to $25,000 on just that action. So we probably would not see an invoice that's going to amount to that. I mean, I don't want to throw numbers out there just randomly, but I mean, maybe $5,000 to $10,000 that as what's left to handle in this case. Maybe.
Councilor Golden.
So Corey brought up a good point, and And I guess I don't understand then why the insurance company denied it, because that really is at the core of the issue, was that as a council person, did he violate this part of our charter? And so I guess, I mean, is there any way to like appeal to the insurance company or appeal their denial? Because I don't know. I mean, it does seem to me that it doesn't make any sense.
It appears that the way that they finish off their communication with us is that unless there are a change in some of the facts or additional information which would change or alter the facts as they know it, their position remains the same. And from my understanding, we don't have any different or alternate facts to actually give to the insurance company. We don't have anything new or different to offer them.
I would think the biggest concern too would be the first argument they make, an insured's making a claim against itself and then asking for coverage.
Yeah, that's the number one issue they have is that they're seeing this as a covered party filing a complaint against a covered party. If they got in the business of insuring claims like that, they could see thousands and thousands of actions.
So Chris, are you recommending that we just let it go, just let things ride the way it's going right now and just wait till we get the solution?
Well, honestly, my recommendation, which doesn't exactly help Mr. Vogelsang, but my recommendation would be to withdraw this and move on. But I listen, from someone who just went through this craziness, I understand Mr. Vogelsang's position. I want to keep my name clear. And Mr. Vogelsang is saying, let it go forward. I want to defend myself, but he's entitled to defense counsel. So my suggestion and recommendation would be that this should be withdrawn. This file should be closed. If the council would like a Commission on Ethics opinion with this factual scenario, so going forward, they'll have some sort of opinion to refer to, then we could go that route. But I completely understand Mr. Vogelsang's position that no, I would like to have this complaint go forward, and I want to show this action as being dismissed, no merit to the claim, but he's entitled to a defense. The question is, who pays for that defense? So my feeling would be we should withdraw. I mean, the council should withdraw. We should ask for the COE to close the complaint, close the file, move on. But yeah, I completely respect Mr. Vogelsang's position that no, I want a formal final order on this complaint in my favor. I get that. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I would just say, obviously, before I expensed my own money, I'd rather it be dismissed. So, or just withdrawn. But just from a factual standpoint, knowing that already half of it's been dismissed for being completely fine. And the only other reason the other part wasn't dismissed is because he wanted to interview the police officer. So I know what that conversation was like. So that's why I'm completely fine with it going forward, because I know what the end result's going to be.
But at the end of the day, Chris, as a council, we've got to do what's best for council and the city.
Right. That's right. And I mean, it appears to me that, this very body, elected body, was voted on and determined that this complaint should be filed. Although there was confusion associated with the coverage and the attorney's fees, but absent that confusion, this elected body did decide that a complaint should be filed and a decision should be rendered going through the complaint route, rather than just seeking an advisory opinion letter, which was the easier route. So yes, Mr. Nichols, I mean, it appears that the complaint should continue. But the city would bear the costs of the attorney's labors on the defense for Mr. Vogelsang with respect to it. So essentially the council will be paying for an opinion in their complaint. And I'd have to add that I would not be involved in any way because of the amount of conflicts of interest. And there's no telling how long this could proceed. And of course, next month, Mr. Vogel is saying will no longer be a council member. But I still do owe particular fiduciary responsibilities with respect to something like this that runs over and flows over. I'll have my fiduciary duties to the new elected body, but I would need to stay clear of having representation or being involved in any way. I owe too many responsibilities to too many of you. And then of course, soon my new bosses.
So it sounds like we've got three options. One option is to do nothing and let it continue the way it continues, in which case we would probably need to make a determination on who is paying the sitting council members' legal fees. The second option is to bring an item back to council for consideration for formal withdrawal. And the third option would be to bring an item back to council that says, let it go forward, but a definitive decision on who pays for the legal defense. If I'm hearing the conversation correctly. That first option, to put a little bit of clarity to it, I think we talked about the fact that, Chris indicated he would be shocked if we expended in excess or even close to the 25,000. I'd have to check what our policies say, but I've got the administrative authority to make payments up to that purchasing threshold of 25,000. If the city council is concerned about one of its council members picking up legal defense fees when it's the own council that's made the claim against it with the filing with COE. So, option one would be the city pays those fees up to that threshold of 25 before it has to come back to council. The other two options would require specific council action to either withdraw or consider withdrawing or take a formal vote to see who actually pays.
And Mike, just let me add the final piece of that, which would be that Mr. Vogel saying would have an attorney-client contract agreement with his attorney. It may be Byron Cornwell or someone else. Byron makes the most sense, but the contractual agreement would be between Mr. Vogelsang and the defense counsel. However, the invoices and fees for that representation would be paid by City of Jacksonville Beach. So it's a very unique scenario, but I just wanted to make sure that everybody was clear of that, is that City of Jacksonville Beach or the city council would not have the contractual attorney-client relationship. That would be between Mr. Vogelsang and the attorney.
Councilor Golding, and I'm also just going to watch the time at 6:48. If we could get some meaningful direction from council to close this out, that would be fantastic. Because again, as Chris indicated, you've only got one guaranteed council meeting left. The second one may be a transfer of council from this sitting council to the next council. But go ahead, Councilor Golding.
So I have one other question. In the event that the Commission on Ethics did find that there was a violation, then would it be appropriate to say, or would it be appropriate to say that if there's a violation, then Mr. Vogelsang is responsible for the attorney's fees, versus if there's not, then the city's responsible for it?
That's a good question. I'm guessing the city attorney would need to research if we need to execute something between the city and Councilor Vogelsang to that effect.
Right, because we don't have a policy provision to turn to, an insurance policy provision to turn to, and we certainly don't have anything like that to give us guidance on the books. So yeah, we'd have to come to some arrangement in that circumstance. But I mean, I have to add that my understanding is that this whole situation took place because Mr. Vogelsang was under the information, given the advice that he won't have to spend a dime. So that's how we ended up crossing over into this world anyway, of it being a complaint rather than just a free advisory opinion letter. which anybody could have, well, actually, Mr. Vogel was saying could have drafted, could have sent it to his colleagues. You could have read it, and then he could have sent it to the Commission on Ethics, all for free.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what I was going to say. It doesn't make sense. I mean, Phil could have represented himself. Why is he going to run up a $10,000 attorney bill? I mean, it just doesn't make sense with him. If he doesn't win, that he's got to pay it.
If there's no thoughts on direction, Mayor Pro Tem Hoffman?
Well, I mean, I'm just shaking my head this whole time because I mean, we're suffering at the hands of some bad advice, because I think when we moved forward with this, we thought this was going to be the right thing to do for all parties involved, and not incur additional costs, to Mr. Vogel saying. So I wish that we could just have his support in withdrawing it right now. But
I will happily support that at the meeting, as long as I can at least say that I know what the facts as I know them there was nothing wrong, but I'm happy that it's being resolved, and I would just express that.
Well, that would definitely be my preference, if we could just withdraw and take it as a lesson learned. But I think, again, like I said, I think what we agreed to is not what is coming to fruition. And I don't think that we're going to get to the outcome that we would like to at this point. So if you
I would also just say it doesn't prevent, if we withdraw it, it doesn't prevent Mcgowan from filing the thing anyway, by the way. So.
But you have defense coverage from our insurance company if it's a citizen, right? Is that what we decided?
Yeah.
That's right. It would fall into a very different category. It would not be a covered party suing or complaining against a covered party. Likely, they could provide coverage,
but
subject to their review.
But they also, part of why they declined coverage was because in their estimation, he wasn't acting in his role as a city council member. So that may still apply, even if the claim comes from someone else.
That's right. They may maintain their position that they still refuse to provide coverage because he wasn't acting on behalf of the city of Jacksonville Beach.
But the action is being taken because he is a council member.
I know. The overall question is being in that role as an elected official for the city of Jacksonville Beach, did he improperly influence or use that position? I understand. I get it. Yeah.
Dr. Dumont?
I just want to pose the larger question here, is why we even have these ethics laws to begin with. And that's for people to maintain their trust in government. So with taken through that lens, I think that's something that we really should be thinking about when we vote on whichever way we decide to go on this. But having our citizens trust that as elected officials, we are only putting their best interest up front, and we are not thinking about our own self-interest, is the key. And if there's even the perception, it might not be illegal, and there's the Venn diagram of legality and ethics, but regardless, it ends up being the perception or how citizens perceive this, which ends up being how they then trust their government, their engagement with government, or whether they think that people run for office just to get themselves in a better position versus move the community forward. So I'd like to just, take that larger reason why we even have a commission on ethics. And that's why the ethics office is there, because it falls kind of outside the legal part, but it's there to maintain people's trust in government.
All right, City Attorney and I will regroup tomorrow, put our heads together and see what we can come out of this with some direction. And I think we're going to go ahead and end the briefing for tonight at 6:55. So Jacob can switch over to the Planning Commission live stream that starts at 7. So with that being said, and Councilor Golding?
Just real quick, could I request for the information that Phil put together for the city attorney's review? Could you give that to the HR department so that next year when we're doing the city attorney's review, we'll have that information as reference? I just wanted, I didn't have an opportunity to bring that up in any of our other meetings. So I just wanted to ask if you could share that with the HR department.
Mike emailed it all to me. Did you email it to everybody or just me? All my requested information.
The information that I sent to you, I'm not sure went to every council member. I believe I sent it to, no, I will go ahead and send that to all council members.
Okay. Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you all. Have a good night, and we'll see you next Monday night at 6 o'clock for our council meeting. All right, yeah, 6 o'clock. Have a
Thanks,
good
you guys. See you.